You will know me as Skull the Norn.
So for the final reading of the evening, we're going to be reading from Thrym's Saga. This is a translation that appears in the Illuminated Edda. And 2 points of interest before, because this is being read out of context, is there will be a seat called Hlidskjalf, which is going to be mentioned. This is Odin's throne, where he can sit upon and look out to all of the worlds. And usually it brings good news and bad news. It usually carries a curse or some sort of ramification. And the second thing is the Brisgamen necklace, which Freya wears, which is one of the greatest necklaces, the greatest treasures of the Viking peoples. So, translation. One morning, Thor awoke to find his hammer missing. Who would dare steal the legendary Mjolnir? Thor rubbed the sleep out of his eyes and wrung his beard and hair. Then stormed over to see Loki. Is this one of your tricks, Loki? Thor bellowed, hardly amused. Loki shrugged and denied any involvement in the heist. I would have loved to be involved in such a prank, but sadly, it was not I. However, I will help you recover it. Then they went to see Freya in her hall. Loki asked to borrow her feather cloak so as to be able to fly over the lands and find it. Loki did not want to use Hlidskjalf, knowing that it always had unintended consequences. Even if it were made from precious silver or gold, I would share my cloak in order to reunite Mjolnir and Thor. I fear for the realms and the Jotun ambitions while Thor is without weapon, she replied. Loki took the cloak and flew about the realms, trying to figure out who would have the audacity to steal such a high-profile artifact. Without the gloves or girdle, the hammer would be useless as a weapon, so must be in the hands of someone who wishes to use it as a bargaining chip. Loki flew east into Jotunheim. There, sitting upon a mound, he found Thrym, adjusting the golden chains upon the necks of his hounds. Spying Loki, flying above him, Thrym shouted, "What news from the gods? What news from the Alfar?" Loki refused to follow Thrym. As the Jotun went into the stables to comb the manes of his horses, instead, he remained hovering in the air at a safe distance. Thrym persisted. Loki, why have you come alone to Jotunheim? Loki replied, I will only bring ill news from Asgard and Alfgard. Have you stolen Mjolnir? A smile spread across Thrym's face. I have buried the hammer 8 rostum below the ground. If you wish to regain the hammer, bring me Freya. Loki returned to Asgard, pondering the dilemma on his way home. Thor was pacing on the wall of Asgard, and at first sight of Loki began to scream at him impatiently. Do you have any news of Mjolnir? Tell me the news while you are still in the air, for a man forgets when he sits, and laying down will turn him into a liar. Thrym, the Lord of Ogres, has your hammer. You will not see it until he's handed Freya as a wife, replied Loki. Thor, eager to reclaim his hammer, stormed over to Folkvangar and demanded audience with Freya. As she arrived, Thor wasted no time in demanding that she get dressed and that she accompany him to Jotunheim to be handed over to Thrym. How dare you presume that I would go with you to Jotunheim, she bellowed in defiance. Do you presume me a harlot to agree to such an unsavory arrangement? Her rage mounted, and the hall shook, and her necklace broke. Even Thor was taken aback by this display of unfiltered outrage. Thor retreated from the hall, knowing full well that his plan would not be acceptable to the goddess. Loki, on the other hand, convened the council of the gods to brainstorm a solution to this most troubling of predicaments. Before he knew it, poor Loki was paired up with Thor in various schemes and machinations, which would result in the return of Mjolnir. Heimdall, a great tactician and strategist similar in talents to the Vanir, proposed a radical idea, dressing Thor in a bridal gown and disguising Loki to be the bridesmaid. Everyone agreed to the merits of Heimdall's plan, but Thor protested. I will not be called a craven wretch for dressing in woman's garb. I refuse to be subjected to such humiliation. Loki was quick to rebuke Thor. Silence! Swallow your pride. If you fail to recover your hammer, the Jotuns will soon drive the gods from Asgard. The thunder god acquiesced in silence as Freya's clothing was adjusted to match Thor's wide frame. He was dressed in a wedding gown that went down to his knees. He was lone Brisgamen and the most famous of Freya's possessions, so as to counteract any suspicions from the Jotuns. His neck was laden in gold chains, so much so that you could hear the jingle of the jewelry. and to Thor's dismay, they also placed a floral headdress upon his head. In contrast, Loki enjoyed the ruse. He cracked jokes while he was dressed as the blushing bridesmaid. They were to take Freya's chariot to Jotunheim, but Thor's protest could not be subdued. He would not relent on his demand to ride into Jotunheim on his very own chariot pulled by his own goats. As they traveled to Jotunheim, Thor spurred on his goats, Tangrisnir and Tanjostir, to such speed that they left a trail of fire behind them. In their wake, earthquakes shook the mountain vales. Thrym heard the increasing din and assumed that his bride was on her way. He barked orders to his slave, "Spread the hay on the benches and be on your best behavior. Freyr, daughter of Njord from Noatun, is coming. I have cows and oxen, jewelry and treasures aplenty. All I am missing is Freya." Thrym lamented as he spied the chariot on the horizon. He was so happy to see Freya that he forgot to question the gods about the chariot. They sat down to feast, and Thor's hunger was unchecked. He devoured a whole ox, 8 salmon, many sweets, and 3 casks of mead. Thrym was astounded and questions what could be at the root of such insatiable hunger. Shrewd Loki obliged him with an explanation. "My lord, Freya has not eaten in 8 nights, in her eagerness to come to Jotunheim." Thrym was satisfied with the answer and leaned in, lifting the veil in order to kiss his bride. He was instantly fear-struck and jumped back the length of the hall and demanded, "Why are Freya's eyes so fierce and fiery?"
So funny.
Cunning Loki wasted no time in providing an explanation. Freya did not sleep for 8 nights. So eager was she to come to Jotunheim. While Thrym was calming his nerves, his sister walked into the hall. Her eyes looked over the bride from head to toe. "Freya, where is your dowry?" she questioned. "Give me your red gold rings, and you shall have my blessing for this union with my brother." Before Thor or Loki could respond, in a desire to break the tension, Thrym called his servants to bring forth Mjolnir. "With the sacred hammer, we will sanctify the bride in the eyes of Var, the goddess of marriage." Thor could barely contain his excitement. As soon as the hammer was set before him, he grasped it, and fueled by rage, he began the bloodbath. He smote Thrym, and then his family, and the sister received the most violent of dowries. And this is how Thor recovered his hammer. Thanks, guys.